Mass shootings are too frequent in the United States.
If we could identify the cause of mass shootings, we might be able to stop them or at least decrease them.
The American Religious Town Hall meeting is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here is your host and moderator.
Welcome, friends. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're delighted to have you here. My name is Andrea Luxton. I am from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan, where I serve as the president. And we have a group of panelists here that are going to introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumley. I am a minister in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, serving at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas.
Hi, I'm Rabbi Dan Levin. I serve as senior rabbi at Temple Bethel in Boca Raton, Florida.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm professor of ethics and history at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
Hello, my name is Mel Robeck. I'm senior professor of church history and ecumenics and special assistant to the president for ecumenical relations at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. I am also an ordained minister with the Assemblies of God.
As you heard from our introductory comments, today's topic is a very important one and impacts all our lives. A recent study of mass shootings published in the journal Injury Epidemiology recommended a standard definition of mass shootings that considers both fatalities and non-fatalities. The authors suggest that the definition of mass shooting should be 4 or more people, excluding the shooter, who are shot in a single event, regardless of the motive, setting, or number of deaths. When one compares gun violence in other countries, the United States is a definite outlier. No other country has nearly as many violent firearm deaths. Every day, more than 110 Americans are killed with guns, and more than 200 are wounded, averaging over 40,000 deaths per year. While mass shootings make up a fraction of gun-related deaths, they are becoming more frequent. So in 2017, there were around 350 mass shootings, and that number jumped to close to 700 in 2021. And at the time of this filming, it looks like 2022 figures will be similar to those of 2021. Is this increase in gun violence stress-related, or is it just another sign of the times in which we live? The suspect in the recent St. Louis school shooting had a handwritten manifesto that outlined his desire to carry out the crime. During a press conference, St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department Interim Director, Commissioner Michael Sack said that authorities found a handwritten document in the suspect's vehicle. He wrote the following: "I don't have any friends, I don't have any family, I've never had a girlfriend, I've never had a social life, I've been an isolated loner my entire life." This, of course, was the perfect storm for a mass shooter. So I'd like the panelists to look at the following questions. Firstly, why is this happening? And can we identify a pattern or root cause to help us learn how to prevent such mass shootings? Secondly, here is a sign posted on an elementary school in a small town, and it reads, "Attention, please be aware that the staff of Keene ISD are armed and may use whatever force necessary to protect our students." Is such a sign the answer to stop more guns? Or thirdly, should we fight harder just to stay away from guns? Panelists, what do you think? Let's go back to those that started our conversation. First of all, Carl.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. This is a tough subject, and it seems we go over and over it again regularly on the show, but sadly we need to do it again. I do realize that we can't just curse the darkness and say it's a bad thing. I think that we as humans have a responsibility to try to find out the causes of mass shootings and also of gun violence in general, and then to take steps as a society that might reduce the number of shootings. I suppose it's probably impossible because we don't live in a perfect world to eliminate every one of them. But nevertheless, I think that we can work towards some solutions. I was stunned by a political poll taken in May of 2022 that actually had an enormous amount of commonality of agreement about at least some initial steps that we might take. And I just want to share them with all of you. 88% of voters strongly approve or support in some way background checks on all sales of guns. 84 support preventing gun sales to those who have been reported to police as dangerous by a mental health provider. 77% approve of requiring guns to be stored in a safe storage unit. 75% approve that we establish a national database for gun sales. 67% approve of banning assault weapons like AR-15s. 74% believe in raising the minimum age to buy guns at 21. Now, all of these are in the high 60s, 70s, 80% of agreement. The one that was the lowest is 54% approve arming teachers with concealed weapons. A slight majority. What I find to be interesting is that 44% of GOP, 40% of GOP members say that we have to accept deadly mass shootings as an accepted part of our living in a free society. I find that these things are really troubling because I feel like we actually have some social consensus on maybe at least some initial steps that we could take, apart from even having gun bans, taking away guns from people. The rhetoric gets ratcheted up so high that people separate into their tribes. And I feel that if we just took some of these steps in which a majority of us, a plurality of us, agree that this would be at least an initial step, and then we can see where we're at after that. But there's so much more to this, of course, and I'm just going to stop because I know, Mel, like I said, you've got all the solutions for us, right?
I'm sure I do. Well, you know, one of the questions that one of the things that I hear so much about, and all of us do on the news, is that we should take guns away from people. That's a huge thing. But really, is that the solution that we go to? I mean, I'm not in favor, and I have spoken in past shows about this. I am not in favor of guns. I don't like guns. I won't have a gun in my house. I wouldn't allow my kids to have guns or anything like that. But the reality is, they do their thing. Not in my house anymore, but they've got guns in theirs, and they do have them locked up, and they do have them licensed and so forth. But the reality is we live in a culture which politicizes all of these issues. And, you know, you have the difference between the various parties on this, the way they think about it. And you also have the idea that this is simply a political issue to be fixed. But the reality is, none of us are politicians. We are religious leaders. And if you go to the base of what stands behind the use of these guns, then you have to say there's a spiritual problem in this land. I don't care which way you define that spiritual problem, but the reality is a lot of these shootings are taking place out of envy, or out of jealousy, or out of hatred, or out of self-loathing, or out of fear, in addition to mental illness. And some of that mental illness comes from the lack of love. That's our specialty. I really get tired of hearing the conversation devolve into politics when in reality our religious organizations have the answers to these heartfelt problems. I think the reason we have so much gun violence in this country is a spiritual problem at its very heart. Once you move beyond that spiritual problem, it's lived out on a day-to-day, in the streets kind of thing. And I don't want to make this so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good. I mean, politics is an important part of who we are and what we do, how we relate to one another, this social consensus that we need, that you asked for, or that you acknowledge in certain of these items. But I don't think we ever get the opportunity in the press or in media, social media, or anywhere else to talk about this as a spiritual problem, as a nation, as a state, as a country, whatever.
Tom?
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with the way we tend to. We even have people that grow up not understanding, not valuing the humanity of the other person. And regardless of our religious traditions, the humanity of each of us, the fact that God made each of us, or whatever, however we our religious tradition defines the creation or who human beings are. We have just a lot of influences, and we can check off the list of the ones that we don't like, that teach us that some human beings are subhuman, but that is a common thread that runs through these kinds of events. First, I want to stop and look at the number. If we're talking about 700 per year, that means 2 every day. Okay, and we can talk about Sandy Hook Elementary School and Uvalde, Texas, and the ones that make all the news and we talk about for months at a time. But we're having 2 mass shootings in this nation every day, but we cannot get away from the fact that common thread in each of them is that there's a gun involved. You don't kill that many people with a knife. That may happen once in a while, but certainly not on the scale that it happens with guns. And to just say, well, this is a mental health issue, we need to improve the mental health community. Well, we have no mental health community. We have no mental health system. We have this sporadic sort of dealing with mental health issues in this nation, and the statistics show that the perpetrators of mass killings are very rarely driven by psychoses. They are driven by depression. They are driven by injustice. They are driven by terrorist aspirations. They're driven by social alienation. And those are the sorts of things that Dr. Robeck points to that we in the religious community deal with all the time. So we need to step up. We cannot just talk.
I agree with so much of what has been said, that I think so much of this is a spiritual problem. But of course, it is all of these things. It is not just one thing. I think in our society, we tend to want silver bullet, pardon the expression, solutions, right? We want there to be one thing that we can change, and then it's all going to be okay. And I think in this kind of a thing, we're dealing with a multiplicity of challenges. So if you were to use the injury epidemiology definition of mass shootings, there's so many different kinds, right? There's the mass shootings that happen in gang violence in places like South Chicago. There's mass shootings like you see in places like Uvalde, Texas. I live just a few miles from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. I saw this up close and personal a number of years ago. There's all different kinds of ways that this manifests itself. And so when you live in a culture like ours that dehumanizes and that regularly celebrates violence, and you mush those two things together, you realize that what happened at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School was a problem 18 years in the making. It had to do with abuse in the home of a vulnerable young man that manifested itself into depression and mental illness and alienation. And if you combine that with a sense of his own sense of dehumanization and the dehumanization that you see in our culture about how we don't see each other in that way, and you couple that together with all of those things, plus available accessibility to weapons of mass destruction, you have a prescription for disaster. So what's the answer to that? To me, the answer to that is to begin to figure out how we heal our society with radical love. What is a shooter really saying? If you're not going to feel my pain or care about my pain, I'm going to make you feel my pain. I'm going to make you care. And so part of the way that we can heal that is to actually start caring, to actually start following the prescription in the book of Deuteronomy, Lo tuchal lihitalem, you shall not remain indifferent. If we can learn to build a culture of care, of respect, of humanity, then we may be able to mitigate some of the things that we're seeing. If we can figure out how to heal some of the destructiveness that's happening in poor communities so that the preferable answer is, let me go join a gang. If we can figure out how to remedy those things, then some of the violent episodes that we see that are manifested in that culture, I think we may be able to alleviate.
So I'd like to take us back to one of the comments that I read in the moderator's statement, which said that when one compares gun violence in other countries, the United States is a definite outlier. And I mean, we're talking about a very definite outlier. It's huge differences. And yet the conversation we've been having, many of these, the alienation, the pressures of society, and so on, surely those exist in other countries too. So what makes this such a particular United States issue?
Well, I think part of the reason why it happens in the United States more than other countries is that it's much easier to get a gun in the United States than it is in other countries. There is, of course, the adage that says, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And that is absolutely true. But people only kill people with guns if they have guns with which to kill people. And I think that one of the things that I was appreciative in the Florida legislature after the massacre at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School was the imposition of a red flag law that said if you appear to be a danger to yourself or others, then you can be relieved of your weapons, and then you can go to court to prove, actually, I'm not a danger and I can possess those weapons responsibly. But if you can't prove that, then you don't get to have a weapon until you can prove that you can. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we could come up with some more common sense gun laws, it might reduce the number of guns in nefarious hands that cause hurt.
Well, and add to that the fact that, in your opening statement, you read that mass shootings are only a fraction of gun deaths. Yeah. They are 1% of gun killings in this country. So you add to those 2 mass shootings a day that we're having, this incredible other 99% of gun deaths in this country. Dealing with guns must be a part of the solution.
20 years ago, Pope John Paul II talked about us being involved in a culture of violence, a culture of despair, a culture of death. A culture, the whole of the culture. And I don't know of another country that glorifies violence like the United States does. And I think about that every time I get on a Delta airline and they say, thank you for your help. All of you military folk, thank you for your help. What do? They're trained to kill. In defense, I agreed, but the fact is killing is really high on our list. Look at the video games that we have. Vast majority of them are beheadings and killing, shootings, and all this kind of mass. And our kids are growing up in this culture of violence. How do we stop that? Well, we have to go to parents for one thing. We have to ask the culture to stop glorifying violence.
Thank you very much. Let's take a quick break.
We hope you're enjoying today's program. If you'd like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the vision and history of the program, and we invite you to become a ministry partner, explore our Town Hall Estates healthcare facilities, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, we look forward to receiving your letters. You may write us at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. If you have a prayer request, please send it to prayerrequest@americanreligious.org. Thank you for writing and thank you for watching. Now, back to today's closing statements.
Yes, thank you, viewers, for watching us. It's very important to us that we have you not just watching, but also responding, giving us your comments, your ideas. It helps us as we frame our shows moving forward into the future. And back now to this very challenging topic, and we're going to hear the closing comments from our panelists. Tom.
We talk and we talk and we talk, and we've talked about this very same issue on this program before. We've got to do more than talk. We've got to turn and start caring about each other. We need to start seeking out those who are on the margins, those who are forgotten, those who are in the corners, those we haven't seen in a while, those who we haven't heard from, those who we don't like, and seek them out. But then we also have to talk about guns. We got to talk about the fact that in a state-by-state comparison, licensing does work, and the banning of large capacity magazines does reduce some of these mass shootings. What doesn't work in a state-by-state comparison, has been shown not to work, is allowing everybody to carry a gun everywhere they want to.
Good.
I've loved what all of you have said as possible solutions. Obviously, it's a highly complex issue and problem. I wish, I don't know, this is probably a wish of mine. I doubt it'll come true, but I wish that in some way our system just drives us, our political system drives us to be divisive into two parties, in which we don't have, it's like you're either in this tribe or you're in this tribe. And yet, when it comes to any number of social issues, there's this plurality that actually agree on a way forward, but the parties themselves don't permit us to move forward in those social policies. And I don't know what that solution is. How is it that we can create a system of government or change it or modify what we have that would honor the will of the plurality rather than the minority and the tribalism? I also think that another piece of this is Mel, you talked about the video games, right? I mean, I know Japan has the same kind of violent video games, so it's more than that. And in between the break, I know, Dan, you just mentioned what's our culture of individuality. So it is a deep cultural problem we have to be working on here. Yeah.
Thank you. No.
Yes, I think that John Paul had really a very good handle on what our society is about, our culture is about. And it is a violence culture and it is a death-related culture. But I do think that as clergy, we have answers to a lot of the deep-seated problems that come to the people who end up shooting other people. And we can talk about mass shootings, and they are very rare, 1%. 99%. I mean, I was talking to Patsy this week. Do you realize we're losing one rapper a week, and they're all in their 20s? Why? Why? Because some people have guns, and because they're jealous, or they've crossed a line, or, it's drugs related, or whatever. You look at 48 Hours, it's a television show, and they bring in these kids. They're all kids, 18 to 25, and they're killing each other with guns. And, I just think that we have to be very careful to address not only the spiritual issue, but also recommend new laws.
So last week, when you concluded the program, Dr. Luxton, you quoted Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality." And in America, we celebrate liberty. And liberty often is seen as individuality. So when we think about my freedoms, we talk about my individual way that I want to live my life. And I think that actually what liberty is about mutuality. The way that we remain a free society is when I don't just care about myself, but when I actually care about making sure you're okay. Mm-hmm. Making sure that you are empowered, making sure that you have the facility and the resources to live a whole life. And when people are meant to feel like they're not human, then they lash out in defense of their own humanity. And I think that part of what we need to do is erase the coarseness, the meanness, the divisiveness that we find in society so that we can remember to humanize. And I think that if we can learn how to humanize things in our culture, in each other, we will hopefully diminish the violent outbreaks that we see against one another.
Thank you all very much. A great conversation on something that is immensely complex. And as we have talked, there is really no one simple answer. As the conversation was going on, the word that kept coming to my mind, which some of you then used really, was this whole sense of we are in an individualistic culture. And in many ways that is so good. That allows so much innovation, so much creativity, so much possibility. But it also does mean that whether we're talking on the political realm or the personal realm, this issue of self-interest becomes so important. So, politically, it seems impossible to get that self-interest out of it. And individuals too, it's like how I feel. I feel this way, therefore I will act on this. A real challenge to us as faith communities. The Charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and can declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American rights to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom, not only in theory, but in reality. So now, friends, until next week at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.